Welcome dear learners. This is the follow-up lecture to the first 3 lectures in which communalism was generally introduced. The views of Indian thinkers on communalism were expounded, the types of communalism were introduced, and the link between religion and communalism was clarified. Communalism is anti-democratic was already established in the first lecture. It was also established that communalism in fact stands to divide people and does not respect the pluralism which is a hallmark of our country. This last lecture will focus on the efforts that are necessary to stop the spread of the menace of communalism in our country. Secularism, the guiding force. As it was already elaborated in the first lecture, secularism as the ideology should be the guiding force for people committed in rooting out the ideology of communalism. To do so, the warrior citizens against the divisive ideology of communalism should necessarily be the staunch believers in the ideology of secularism. To be the convinced citizens in the ideology of secularism, they also should be very much informed of secularism as an ideology and how it should be understood in the Indian context. They should be aware that secularism means separation of the state, politics and other non-religious areas of life from religion, and religion being treated as purely personal matter. This is the definition of secularism. How this ideology should be understood in India, a country of many religions and cultures, is the next question. The right answer can be summed up in 2 or 3 sentences. They are: the state must be disassociated from any kind of religion. The second one, the state should be neutral towards all religions. The third one, the state should have equal regard for all religions. Secularism in India does not mean religion, which means any religion, is discouraged. Here, it means the freedom of all religions and even of people who consider themselves non-believers. This ideology should be the guiding force for the citizens who are committed to rid India of divisive and non-democratic ideology of communalism. If this is the guiding force in the practical field, how it should be employed is the next question before us. There are some practical instructions in which this counter ideology for the communalism can be employed, and this is the responsibility of responsible citizens. Some instructions: we should not let the communalists set the agenda or just react to their agenda. For example, we should focus on the danger that communalism possesses to the Indian nation and the Indian people, and therefore attack communalism for being anti-national, anti-democratic, opposed to Indian culture, values and civilization. For instance, a petty issue relating to one's food habit or a place of religious worship should not become a worship point of emotion for us. The issue at the base, division of the peaceful Indian society, should be identified and tackled. The second one is, we should also question the claim by communalists that they are the guardians of Indian culture. Instead, we should point out that the communalists are not the guardians, but the exact opposite, the destroyers. We should make people aware that the communalists are opposed to and tend to destroy the basis of our cultural and civilizational values. We should point out that the communalists are against our long held tradition that respects pluralism, that approves and appreciates syncretism and synthesis. We should explain to the people the values and nature of democracy, national development, national interest, national pride and national strength in a multi-religious, multicultural society. We should be aware and make people realize that national unity is not to be confused with homogenization, uniform in everything. Our unity is not characterized by uniformity. It is characterized by the mutual coexistence of the diversities. It is unity in diversity. We should make people aware that any effort made to do away with this unity, which means the unity in diversity, to marginalize and to demonize the minority would pose a great threat to the peaceful harmony which is the bedrock for any nation's economic development. The examples from the world history and world around us continue to re-emphasize the fact that it is in maintaining the diversities of a nation can truly be vibrant and move towards the economic development. The recent example can be seen in our neighboring island country Sri Lanka. The homogenization effort has reduced the country to a severe economic degradation. We should bring home to the Indian people the basic approach of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru in the discovery of India regarding respect for India's great cultural heritage from the Vedic period on and its openness to fresh influences and challenges, resulting in the formation of a composite culture which simultaneously welcomes diversity. We should refute the false claim of communalists that they are the champions and protectors of a particular religion. Instead, we should develop our own discourse on our expositions of Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Sikhism and religion as a whole as Gandhi did. A special focus should be given to the opinions of the Mahatma Gandhi on the idea of religion. That is, Gandhi's two distinct ideas about religion in the denominational sense and religion in the sense of belief in God and truth and the traditional concept of dharma. Religion in the denominational sense, we should have no role to play in the administration of a country. It is a matter purely in the private realm. Religion as the ethical code should motivate each sincere citizen, and that would lead the country towards a prosperous future. We should actively emphasize India's achievements in the past like the communalists do, but unlike the communalists, we should base our claim on truth. An empty claim in any past superiority which is only presumed will only weaken the scientific spirit and mind of the people. We should also be clear in our judgments as to what should be prized from the past and what should be critically evaluated from the past. We should adopt the approach of Swami Vivekananda in this respect. Swami Vivekananda opposed anti-intellectual and irrational religious and social dogmas of the past. He said, "Is religion to justify itself by the discoveries of reason through which every science justifies, or the same methods of investigation which apply to the sciences and knowledge outside to be applied to the science of religion. In my opinion, this must be so, and I am also opinion that the sooner this is done, the better." He further stated, "Liberty in thought and action is the only condition of life, growth and well-being. Where it does not exist, the man, the race and the nation must go down." We should bring out the true character of communalism, especially that is different from religion and from morality based politics. We should differentiate between religion and misuse of religion for communal purposes. The people convinced in the ideology of secularism should assert loudly and aggressively that they stand for nationalism, national unity, secularism, democracy, economic and social development, etc. They should define nationalism and focus on the character and achievements of the national movement. They should point out how India's high place and her present economic status in the world, the development of the scientific laboratories and some of Asia's and indeed world's best universities means institutes of learning participating in the information technology revolution, the development of atomic energy on our own and of India as a nuclear power are our achievements and those of the Indian national movement. People should also point out how after independence, India successfully met the threats to Indian unity and resolved the problems of the linguistic states, national and official languages, the integration of the tribal peoples, the question of reservation and social justice and the low position of women. The questions that should motivate people convinced in the ideology of secularism and who are committed to root out communalism from the country should be: how should the nationalism be further strengthened? How can we overcome the divisive forces? How should the problems of poverty, inequality and the resultant social injustice be dealt with? Such committed people also should be aware that the communalists are exactly trying to occupy the nationalist space. This should be denied to them by all means. Rather, they should point out that the communalists encourage divisive forces and that they are thus a threat to national unity. People should make and their consciousness of the way the communalists trying constructing narrow mentality among the honest citizens. This narrow mentality does great harm by pitting one Indian against another fellow Indian. This will lead to mutual antagonism and will divide the Indian citizens based on one's language, religion and culture. This is a death knell for the Indian nation, which is a mosaic of many cultures and religions. In this context, the committed people also should focus on constitutional values, especially the values of democracy and the equality of all citizens before the law. People should be taught that the constitution makers of India did not think of themselves as Hindus or Muslims or even as Dalits. They provided reservation to Dalits and tribals not because they were themselves Dalits and tribals, but because they were Indians who championed social justice and wanted to remove the plot of untouchability and discrimination from Indian society. People should be taught that Indian constitution puts emphasis in Indians as citizens and not as members of caste or religious communities. With the use of the Constitution of India and the legal measures provided in it, the committed people also should expose the communal forces and should be brought before the law. We should educate people regarding the values and ideological orientation of the national movement and explain in simple terms how those were different from communalism or Jingoism. Jingoism means extreme patriotism. This is having a blind faith that one's nation is always right. We should also educate the people how the communalist forces contributed negatively to the Indian freedom movement. The best example could be the partition of our country into India and Pakistan and all the bitter experiences associated with it. That was the result of the popularity of the communal forces, example Muslim League of Muhammad Ali Jinnah and its demands. The lesson that should be driven home is communalist forces stood to divide country and even today they stand to divide the nation. With regard to this previous point, the teaching of history should be properly done. There are efforts to communalize the education system, especially the teaching of Indian history in Indian educational institutions. History was polarized by the British colonizers who had their own eggs to grind. In order to divide the unity of the Indians, The British writers of the history shaped the history as the Hindu period, Muslim period, the British means the Christian period. Such writing and teaching can evoke bad feelings among the people. Hindus will believe that it was a golden period once in India when the Hindus were rulers, and this golden period was destroyed by the Muslims rulers who succeeded them. The Muslim will believe that they were rulers over the Hindus for more than 2 centuries. The mutual understanding and the mutual love of that Muslim and Hindus had for each other will be relegated. Such lopsided teaching of history will only fan the fire of communalism. The communist forces understanding the real potency of communalizing history or trying to take over the syllabus of the school educational system. This should be resisted tooth and nail by the people committed to right the country of communist forces. We should also keep in mind that it is necessary to attack all communalisms, whether of the majority or of the minorities simultaneously. In fear of not offending the minority religion, the communist forces from its side should not be tolerated. It is not the communalism of the majority which is a threat. Communalism in any sort or of any sort is a threat to the unity of the nation. For instance, if we take the example of India, we can say that Hindu communalism is not just anti-Muslim. Hinduism are also equally threatened by it. If Hinduism is the majority religion, the Islamist communalism or Sikh communalism will also have the same effect on Muslim and Sikhs of India. That is, an Islamist communalism is not just anti-Hindu, but Muslims and Islam will also be equally threatened. Related to the previous point, people should be sensible and sensitive enough, especially when they make some statements about the religion or the religious practices of the other. A silly and demeaning remark on a particular religion or a religious practice can evoke unnecessary ill feelings. Since India is a nation of many religions and cultures, the comment, especially the negative comment on the other's religious practice or the language or the cultural practices should be made after giving much evaluation in the mind. We should be responsible for the remarks that we make. In our responsibility, we need to be sensible and sensitive. There is a need for mass political, educational and ideological work against communalism. We have neglected such work up to now. Democracy in itself does not act as a shield against communalism. There is a need for a simultaneous all India ideological campaign. It may take the form of an all India week against communalism, with each day devoted to a particular leader, Mahatma Gandhi, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Maulana Azad and Swami Vivekananda. The help of the secular intellectuals should be sought and included in this program. In this program, the target audience should be the young citizens and the youth of the country. We also should know that one program or a workshop will not do wonder. We should be aware of the fact that the sustained efforts should be taken in this regard. It is not enough to address the issue only when there is a major outbreak of communal violence. That is firefighting, that is necessary, but what is more important is to prevent any future fire from consuming the country, for which the sustained efforts over a long period of time are very much necessary. We should be aware that proper anti-communal ideological work requires that we must know what people say, what communal beliefs prevail among the people of an area, a village, a town, a school, a college, a children's magazine and of course television and other media. It is these concrete beliefs which have to be dealt with. We have to find out and address the real concerns of people. We have to analyze and counter those elements of communal ideology which appeal to otherwise sane persons. We should promote common celebrations of festivals such as Holi, Deepavali, Eid, Pongal and Christmas. We should also bring out heroic role played by local leaders who were committed to safeguarding the secular nature of our country and who were staunch opponents of the ideology of communalism. Finally, let us also remind ourselves that the resistance against the divisive ideology of communalism should be seriously undertaken as an ideological war. As a war, it has to be fought on multiple fronts: education, media, campaigns and workshops, etc. Also, the war will not always move in the forward direction. There may be setbacks, there may be failures. The communist ideology might get higher ground and will prove to be a powerful aggressor. That should not discourage us. Rather, we should be prepared for it. Good preparation and the ever positive attitude should be war armor for the people committed to root out communalism from our beloved country. In this particular war against the communist ideology, we also should be aware that the enemy might change his or her tactics every now and then. We should be ever perspective to observe it and be ever diligent to change the counter tactics accordingly. We should be also aware that in this war, there should be no place for the emotions. Communalists are experts in manipulating the emotions of the people, and when it involves the religion, emotions are all the more vulnerable. We should be aware of such possibilities and we should keep check of our emotions and should let our intellectual decide our decisions. Only then the real issues can be addressed, and that will be the perfect antidote for the evil of communalism. Dear learners, I hope you all must have enjoyed this session with much information. It may have enriched the knowledge and overview about communalism. Thank you. All the best.